I really hope that the audio for this video holds. As I'm recording, every now and then the microphone starts cracking if I have the webcam open. If I have the webcam closed, then it's pristine audio all the way. But if the webcam is open, at random intervals, and I don't even get notified of this, the audio starts cracking, and it's very weird. I think it's a software issue because it doesn't happen in OBS. It only happens when I'm using Camtasia. So my apologies in advance. I'm just trying to see if this is going to work or not. But anyway, there's another controversy, which I like to call a non-controversy. They're starting an African-American lady, Jodie Turner Smith, to play in the next prequel of The Witcher. And obviously there's a lot of talk about this on places that doesn't have comment sections suffering from disabilities. I, for one, don't really care about this issue, believe it or not. I know that if I was a social justice activist, if I was a pristine member of society, I would definitely have to care if the issue was reversed. Because if you guys remember when Disney came out, a lot of people were complaining that Jasmine, the actress playing her, wasn't of Agrabah descent. I'm not making it up. Like, the lady which played the role apparently was half English and half Indian. And they're like, no. See, you can't cast something like this in Agrabah. Like they actually went, and this is not the only time. It's just like when people that call themselves progressives, whenever they're complaining about nonsense like this, you know, casting someone that doesn't look the part, is just ignored by the media. They don't talk about it as much. But if you have the audacity to complain when a person of color is cast in the role of a white character, then people freak out. Now, I don't really care about this, although I did find it funny when they casted a black lady as Ciri, because they realized that it's going to have a little bit of problems down the road. You see, the father of Ciri is the Emperor of Nilfgaard, and the whole book, The Witcher, is based on the rape of Poland. In European, rape means raping of the land. I mean the plundering, the people getting massacred, people actually getting raped by soldiers. That happened in European history, especially during wartime. And the Nilfgaard represents the German Empire that's going into Poland, and that's what the author based his books on. The fictional world of The Witcher is basically the medieval version of Poland with all the problems that came with, right? So if you cast Ciri as a black woman, that means that her father, the Emperor of Nilfgaard, is black, and that means that the rape of Poland would be done by, well, oh my god, that's very problematic, right? So they immediately got on the bike and started backpedaling. It's like, no, we can't have this. Recasted Ciri as a white girl. It's just like, you know, like all of this nonsense, like all of this political nonsense, instead of focusing on making a good movie, instead of focusing on all their efforts channeled into making a good TV show, they're channeling into this cultural nonsense. But you know what? I'm an empathetic person that doesn't really mind all of this. Like, I am so tolerant. I am far more tolerant than people on the left. I'm not the type of guy to complain about the casting of a fictional character in Agrabah or in the world of The Witcher. All right, well, we're going to get into that a little bit later, but what I do care about is a good story. And I honestly think that the reason they are doing this is because they know they have a mediocre story. If you actually read on what the story is about, well, it's a prequel before the monsters have appeared into the world of The Witcher. So that means no Geralt, that means no monsters. Why the living fuck would I want to watch that? Basically what they're doing is they're trying to make Game of Thrones again. No, sorry, I'm not into that. You know, like, at this point, this is a whole new IP that has nothing to do with The Witcher, but they want the name of The Witcher, they want the brand, they want people like me to watch their stuff. Like, no, if you want me to watch my stuff, stop insulting me, okay? I'm a fan of The Witcher because of Geralt, because of the monsters, because of the world in Rivia. And if you remove all those interesting things and you're putting the plot 1,200 years before all of the events that happened in the book, I'm not interested. I can see a lazy cash grab. I can spot it a miles away, and this is what it is. You just want to trick me into watching some mediocre garbage. which has the name of The Witcher. Because if you were actually that certain that what you're creating is good and stand up on its own merits, then you wouldn't name it The Witcher. You'd make a new IP. You'd make something else. But I'm pretty sure, they want to do some budget cuts because monsters are expensive to animate, and it's what they're doing. You're going to get some cheap ripoff of Game of Thrones that's not going to even par with the original, and this is why I'm against it, right? The thing with the casting, when they put a African-American lady in the world of The Witcher, is just to create the conversation, to get people to talk about it in the forums, on something that otherwise would pass unnoticed. Because again, no one cares about The Witcher if you remove the monsters. No one cares about The Witcher if you remove all of the elements that created that beautiful story in the first place. And by the way, just so you can understand why this is just blatant pandering, and why I would actually have an argument against the writers, is that the world of The Witcher does have black people. But they're on another continent. Because the world of The Witcher is inspired from Polish folklore. So, yeah, in Rivia, people are white. In Nilfgaard, it's a lot more diverse. But there are actual places within the world of The Witcher where you don't have any white people. The natives are black. Right? And these places are described in the book very vaguely, but they talk about how the people there have a completely different culture than the ones of Rivia. The monsters there are completely different. From what we know, they might have completely different schools of witchers, or they might not even have witchers. They might not even be stereotypical and hateful towards the other races, like the elves and the dwarves. It would be a very interesting place to explore. Like, I would definitely watch a spin-off of The Witcher that takes place in one of these fictional settings. And by the way, you can even come up with other things, like maybe you can have the equivalent of Asia there. You can have the equivalent of the Middle East. You can go all out. But that requires that the writers would have creativity. It requires that the writers would think for themselves a little bit. It would require imagination. So that's a little bit too much to ask from today's writers. So why don't they just race swap one character with no explanation whatsoever? When I watched the Witcher TV show, I was finding very difficulty getting immersed in the setting, because if you understand about medieval cultures, like Rivia, for instance, they were very ethnical homogenous, because at the time people didn't travel that much. So if you just randomly happen to have people of different races there, then that means that Rivia is a colonizing nation. It's like, why is in the aristocracy all of a sudden a person of a different race? It makes no sense from a story point of view. So yeah, it just breaks immersion. Game of Thrones, on the other hand, they did races really well. You had the Westeros, where most people were of the same race, but then you had the other cities, and you have Pentos and other places that have completely different people. Makes sense, right? Why? Because R.R. Martin is a good writer and can create immersion. What the people on Netflix are creating is just pandering. I would have loved to see a story where maybe Triss Merigold gets sick and the antidote happens to be on another continent, and Geralt of Rivia has to travel there, and he explores different civilizations, and he explores different cultures, and he befriends interesting people. That would have been great. I would watch that, but instead we're getting this. And by the way, it's kind of funny that The Witcher, if you would put me in charge, I would have just done what The Mandalorian does. Like, you can make just standalone episodes with Geralt of Rivia going through the new continent, traveling through dense jungles, and all he does is he travels around, finds a tribe or a village or maybe a city of some sorts, talks to people, and solves their problem. Like, oh, they got this new interesting monster going around. So Geralt goes around, talks to people, does research on the monster, finds out something about his tracks and habits, and then at the end of the episode, kills the monster, takes the trophy, gets some money for that, continues traveling. Like that, I think a lot of people would watch that, and then you put some overwhelming story, like some overarching thing where, maybe Nilfgaard wants to invade that place, but Geralt starts getting really attached to some of the people and tries to stop the invasion. You can have a lot of good stuff, and it wouldn't seem like pandering. You can have a lot of quality stuff here. But, you know, like the artists aren't interested in that. Like what they're interested in is in just doing this and thinking that this is going to sell. I mean, I just have a rule of thumb, you know, like when you tell me more information about the cast rather than about the story of the show or anything interesting about the lore, then I assume it's going to be bad. Because you're literally saying that your best foot forward is the casting. And while the casting can help, don't get me wrong, it can help. But if you're not having the story as your best foot forward, if you're not managing to create some really good intrigue or some really good setting, and instead you're focusing on the cast, yeah, no, that's sorry. I'm just going to call it that it's going to be mediocre. Now, perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps it's going to be the best show ever, in which case we're going to have the same conversation in 6 months or whatever it comes out, and I'll be like, you know what? I was wrong. I apologize. But I have a very strong feeling that I'm not wrong. Based on historical events, based on what happened previously with other shows similar. I smell a female Ghostbusters when I see one. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the comment section.